is Dale Blomquist, and I was born in Tulare in 1924 at a place that used to be a clinic, is now a Domino's Pizza across from Zumwalt Park. And I went through a Wilson School, Central Grammar School, and Tulare Union High School. And Tulare Union High School is some of the fondest memories of my life. I enjoyed it thoroughly. But you know, 1941, the 7th of December, there's a thing called Pearl Harbor. And I graduated in June of 42, so I was right on the spot to do whatever they needed me to do. We all said, well, we're not going to have any trouble finding a job when we graduated. So anyway, I had a plan. I was 17 years old when I graduated in June of 42. I had a plan, and because I was intensely interested in aircraft, because I built model airplanes all through school. I says, I want to go to Fresno and get into Fresno State and get enough education so if the draft gets close, I'll join the Air Corps and I'll be a P-38 pilot. That was my plan. Well, it was a good plan, except when I went to Fresno and found a place to live and eat and work, about 5 days before I was going to turn 18 in December of 1942, they came out with huge headlines in the Fresno Bee. No more enlistments. Everybody would be drafted and placed into services where needed. So I had 5 days to do something quick. So I went to the Navy recruiter and got the paperwork, came home and got Dad to sign, and I went back and joined the Navy. First thing I did is I found myself with a bunch of other Central Valley people that joined the Navy or about the same time I did. We wound up in a federal building going to medical inspections and swearing in and all that stuff. And we had a break. We're down in the passageway down in the basement, and we're all sitting there leaning against the bulkhead of the Navy. And here comes a guy with 2 big red stripes on his arm. He's a second-class petty officer. Of course, we all thought he was the man, you know. And he says, all you guys line up here. So we all jumped up, and he gave us about 30-second orientation of the Navy. And then he says, all you guys that want to go to San Diego for boot camp, 1 step forward. So we all leaped forward almost on top of him. And he says, get your ass back in line, you're going to Farragut, Idaho. So we wound up going to boot camp in Farragut, Idaho. And it was 30 below up there a few times, and I got a wooden rifle walking around the war track. But we got through it, and finally wound up as a seaman out of boot camp, assigned to the USS Ganymede, which was a United States Navy cargo ship. There were 5 sister ships. They each had a towing winch on the stern. And we're just about ready to leave on August the 28th, 43, for the South Pacific. Here comes 5 tugs, each towing a section of a floating dry dock, which is a big piece of, like a ship, was blunt. And we had to tow that sucker all the way from San Francisco to New Hebrides Islands, Espiritu Santos, which was only about 6,500 or 7,000 miles away. And the speed of the convoy was 5 knots, which is 6 miles an hour. I went out to the cemetery the other day and drove with 6 miles an hour. I said, how did we get anywhere? Well, we took 50 days, we didn't see any land, and 52 days we arrived and got rid of the dry dock. And then we headed for Melbourne, Australia, and the speed of that ship went up 100%, all the way to 10 knots. I thought, man, it's flying. This is really going someplace. But I spent 28 months aboard that ship in the South Pacific, moving people, moving support, supplies, and everything up behind the war. We made 1 invasion with a task force going into Hollandia, New Guinea, and we unloaded some Army engineers. So anyway, we made this invasion of Helena, New Guinea. We unloaded the Army Air Corps field engineers and all their equipment. It took us about two or 3 days to do it. And we're headed out to sea at night on, I think it was on the third day. And we had one escort with us, and we're chugging along out there going to head south and get out of the area. All of a sudden there's an airplane orbiting overhead. Oh. And then suddenly there were about 50 flares that dropped on us and lit up the place just like daylight. So we assumed, and we were right, that it was a Japanese airplane ready to drop a bomb or an aerial torpedo on us, except they could tell that we had nothing on our decks and we were high in the water. They didn't want to waste ammunition on us. They went back and got our sister ship. So we lucked out on that deal. Anyway, spent 28 months doing all that stuff, moving up all the way from Melbourne, Australia to Subic Bay in the Philippines. And after 28 months, we finally chugged our way back home, stopped once in Honolulu for fuel, came on into San Francisco, and I got off the ship and arrived in Tulare. I walked in the front door of my house on my 21st birthday. That was a good birthday. I had 2 bottles of Australian beer in my sea bag, one for me and one for my dad. So after I got out of the service, of course, I got married and had a couple of boys. But I went to school and got my aircraft and power plants license and went to work in the aircraft business. And 4 or 5 years later, I happened to be up in Oakland Airport working for a small airline, and everybody says, "Come on, join the Naval Air Reserve." There was a Naval Air Reserve station on the north end of the airport. So I broke down after a while, and I went and joined up in June of 1950, and 2 weeks later the Korean War broke out. And I had the rate that they really needed to go with a land-based naval patrol squadron as a master at arms, and I got called back in for active duty for 2 more years during the Korean War. But I didn't have to go to Korea. I stayed in Japan all the time and got home okay in about 6 months. And the service to me is like other people here have been saying, it is really something that all young people ought to experience. You get to know, know your way around in different world countries. You get to know how to act, how to take orders, how to do things, and it's just something that everybody ought to experience, I think, when you're about 18 years old. And that's about my life in the service.
All right. Well, Del, I noticed you have some artwork on your arm there. Are those tattoos you might have got while you were in the Navy?
I got this in 1943 in Market Street, San Francisco, before I went to sea. And I said, every sailor has to have at least one tattoo.
All right.
So I got a tattoo.
And what
Cost me $5.
And what's it a picture of?
Well, there's an anchor here, and there's an eagle hanging on to the anchor, and there's a shield, you know, United States shield, and a flag, and the flag waves. Very well, yes. You get camaraderie that's just unbelievable. You get to make friends that last forever. And when you're a part of a crew of about 135 people on a ship, you get to know everybody pretty well.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you're all trying to make everything work the same way. Do a good job.
And that I don't want to say that was a lot of years ago. It was just a few years ago. But back in the 1947, have you ever kept in contact with any of those people?
Yes, I have 2 or 3 people that I remain in contact with, but I think they're all passed away by now. Yeah. Yeah, I used to have one in Wasco, and I had another one in San Leandro, and I kept in contact with them. Yep.
And in World War II, I know my dad was in the Army Air Corps. My mom, she was in the waves for a while, and as I understand, you know, being younger, I wasn't there, but the whole country was on a war effort, right? And
Yep.
and so, can you describe that at all? I know you were out at sea a lot, but
Well,
yeah.
all the time that I was gone, I just couldn't imagine what my mother was going through. Her only son is off someplace, you know, can't contact him by email during World War II. We used to write letters. I used to get 20 at a time sometimes because we wouldn't be any place we could get any mail for days. So yes, that was one thing that really hovered in my mind, was I just don't know how my mother could withstand all of the stress of being gone like that. But fortunately, it worked out fine. I got home and everything was okay.
I bet your dad and mom were really glad to see you, and your
Oh,
dad
yeah.
was really glad to drink that beer with you too.
I was glad to walk in that door too. Yeah.
Wow.
I didn't really think I was coming back. I just didn't think it was going to happen. It's a dang slow cargo ship out in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Perfect target for a torpedo,
Yeah.
but it didn't happen. Fortunately,
Yes. Yeah. And
that's when I gave my life to God. In 1943, I was on that ship, headed south. I had no idea what was going to happen to me next. So I said, God, here I am. Whatever's fair, take it, go.
Dale, we had sea rations.
Sea rations?
They had three patties, a hamburger, to a can. And I think they had a lot of vitamins in it because, man, we were always starving though. But you guys had a man, you guys had hot lunch and everything.
I gotta tell you a story about that. The ship that I was on would hold fresh food for about a month, maybe a month and a half. Then you'd go over to dehydrated potatoes, dehydrated carrots, dehydrated things, powdered eggs. That was what we ate. And I was anchored in a place in the Admiralty Islands, and I had received a letter from my mom that a really good friend of mine that I went to school with in Florida was on the USS Misair. That's a refrigeration ship. All it does is haul fresh fruit around. And here comes the Misair into the Admiralty Islands and dropped the hook. And I jumped on the boat and well, first I went up on the light and made sure that Forrest Ogun was aboard the Misair. So then I took a boat over to the Misair and I went aboard the ship and they sent me down to the galley. That's where my friend Forrest Ogun was working. He was working between two of those big tubs on wheels down on the galley. He was picking the stems out of fresh strawberries.